and really just sends shockwaves through the rest of it. So let's get it going. Our first game of the day. We've got Echo and Scithe going in right now into Mists.
All right, and there we go. We already see the Elemental Shaman from Echo. So we have a Moonkin, Fire Mage, and Elemental Shaman. Of course, also the Holy Paladin, and also sticking to the Vengeance Demon Hunter. But triple range setup here by Echo, while Stygia is still sticking to this Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest we've seen has been played a lot in Cup 4 mainly because of that, because of basically having the Night Guardians, making sure that the combustion cooldown is even lower than it usually is, and of course also having that PI as well to help out the mage's damage. But Echo says they don't need the Shadow Priest support. The Elemental Shaman is overall going to be better. So let's see what Maris can do on that Elemental.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting shakeup, right? Because the S-Priest was pretty much there to completely buff the mage's damage, but you don't really need to buff the mage's damage if you play a class that does just as much consistent AoE, pretty much, right? The one major thing that I think Fire Mage has over the Ellie Shaman is it has a little bit better initial AoE burst, but Ellie Shaman is much better at doing AoE damage over time, so on longer, more dangerous pulls, they'll do pretty good. In addition to that, they have pretty good solid single target burst damage just overall, even with using the Earthquake Legendary. And look at this shakeup already from both teams. I think this is a little different from what we saw before. They're pulling those double bow breakers into this 4-pack and just getting that initial AoE down even quicker than we've seen in previous MDI Cups. And look at the damage going on in the group from the double thrash here. Both teams getting through it pretty cleanly. See the cauterize pop from Simba over on the side of Stygia here, but other than that, both teams are looking just fine. Just going down a little bit faster on the side of Echo. Looks like they're going to have about a 10 to 15 second advantage here.
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting strategy to see by both of the teams playing around bolstering here, still wanting to be as efficient as possible, so they pull those 2 higher HP mobs first and then pull them into the trash. So really well executed by both of the teams, but it looks like Stygia is having a little bit of a trouble as Sunshine has to kite away from these Soul Cleavers that are hugely bolstered as he gets one more Soul Cleave onto him. Did manage to finish it off. One more thing, the reason why they want to kite them as well is because they actually have a debuff on them that makes them heal on auto attacks. So you will actually avoid that healing if you kite around a little bit. But Echo really pulling ahead here as they managed to finish off that pack a lot quicker without getting much bolstering stacks off, and they're already done with their pride.
Yeah, we mentioned the bolstering not being too much of a factor in this dungeon, like Dragnos mentioned earlier, but you could see it really was a problem for Stygia there. They left one of the bow breakers up a little bit too long. It got 3 stacks of bolstering on it, and it took them forever to finish it off. And because of that, you know, Echo actually took like a 30 to 40 second advantage here. They're already on to Ingram Malik. They already have Droman down to 60% here, and they'll be entering that initial burn phase here in just a second here. I think this is the first time as well that we're ever going to see what this burst looks like without the PI on either the Holy Paladin or the Fire Mage here, so we'll have to see how good this burn goes here. Droman down below 20% here. The boss is taking increased damage, and let's see them blast here. In previous cups here, we've seen the Holy Paladin go up to as much as 40k single target burst here. There's the Convoke coming out from Fragments there. Ingram Malik down below 20% HP, and it looks like it's not going to be an issue. They don't need PI at all. Man, just completely bursted through from Echo there.
Yeah, that was actually an insane amount of damage coming out of Echo here. And I kept an eye on the Celestial Alignment of Fragments here on the Moonkin, and it just came up the same second as the damage increase happened on the boss. So that was actually incredibly close, but they of course know exactly how long it's going to take them. Stygia, though, on the other hand, having a little bit of an issue as they're taking quite long to finish off Droman. So that means their Pride buff, it's still up, but the Rufa going down, unfortunately, here. Their Moonkin going down is actually a disaster as they have the damage increase on the boss, and their Moonkin, the biggest single target burst, is actually down. They don't have a battle rest to get him back up. This means this boss is going to take forever. Either they have to reset here, actually, or they want to finish it off with only 2 damage dealers alive. I'm not sure if they can, to be honest, because it's going to take them a long time to finish off Droman here, and they probably need 2 more phases on the boss with only 2 damage dealers without any sort of offensive cooldowns ready.
Yeah, that's about worst case scenario for them here. It looks like the Paladin didn't even have the wings or the Ashen Hollow up there for that initial burst, so maybe they were, getting them 2-phase it anyways. I don't think a Moonkin would have been 50% of the boss's HP. As strong as Convoke and CAR together, it's all right.
With that full moon?
Maybe with the full moon crit they could get it off, but it would still be tough for them. I mean, that boss, it's a 50%, it's probably still got 2 million HP left, so it's a lot to chew through for them here. And like you said, with that DPS down, they're going to be in this phase that much longer, and they're even using the Combust here to push the boss phase so that they don't get bursted down by the rot damage, over the course of the fight. Ashen is now coming out, though, so they'll have that burst damage, but again, 50% of the boss's HP without Combust is going to be a tough sell for them. Echo, on the other hand, they're just cruising through the mists here. Oh, no.
Yeah, I think this might be a full team wipe for Suggest. Their healer is going down. I don't think they're going to be able to finish this off, unfortunately, especially because this phase is just not going to be enough. So it looks like they are resetting the boss. But yeah, on the other hand, Echo, no issues whatsoever for them. So far, they are still on 0 deaths. They are spawning that 40% pride. And one thing that is going to be interesting to see in Mists with these affixes is how exactly they're going to be playing this maze. Because over the course of the cups, the teams have figured out multiple smart ways to pull certain trash through the walls, basically, with, for example, Force of Nature by Moonkins. Any sort of pet can pull some stuff through the wall here, and we've seen the teams do that. But with Bowstring, I'm not sure if that's even going to be worth it or how exactly they're going to be doing it. So let's keep an eye on Echo, see what kind of strategies they have figured out to make this maze go faster, to pull more trash. And there we go. They actually did pull one extra pack on top of this mini-boss here. And this is actually the perfect way to pull this on top, because it takes a while for the trash to arrive, but in the meantime they got the mini-boss lower, and because it has a lot higher HP, they can actually cleave everything down evenly. So I really, really like the strategy here by Echo.
Yeah, and they did end up using the trees there, but I was actually kind of surprised to see that they used the trees there. What Ellie Shamans can do as well, if they take Perma Ellie, they can use their Earth Elemental. They can send it to attack other mobs throughout the mist as well, and that way you save your trees so that you can use it for a reset for Necrotic later on. So, it's a little bit of a, perfection play, I guess, but not an issue at all for Echoes. They just get through the trash anyways without the trees for the Necrotic reset. So, didn't need it at all here, and, continuing to do more of those efficient pulls. Spawning the Pride, make sure they open the door before the Pride actually spawns so that they can then pull the Pride on top of a pack and just blast AoE everything down.
Yep, and it doesn't even look like they're even focusing the Pride. It's alive for a really long time here. They're just evenly cleaving everything down, and you can see how much damage Maris is doing. Of course, we have Gingy on the Fire Mage with Combust that is topping the damage, but I don't think anyone is surprised about that. But the Elemental Shaman is still doing a huge amount of damage as well, and just providing so much utility as well. So it's really good to see different kinds of classes, the teams bringing them out and just trying them and making them work too. So really, really cool to see the Shamans.
Oh yeah, for sure. Second attempt now on Ingram Malik for Stygia here. We'll see if they're able to burst through it more quickly. I don't believe the Ashen Hollow will be back up, so it's probably going to be a two-phase for them again here as well. No Bloodlust either this time, right? So it's going to be a big pain for them to get through. And yeah, there's a little bit of a difference here. We can see Echo now working on the second boss, while Stygia is still on the first boss, unfortunately. Not going that well for our first team from the Chinese region here. But I mean, you got to remember, Echo is, they're the one seed for a reason. They're just kind of heads and shoulders above everyone else in how they've been playing consistently lately. And now that they have Zalia back as well, I think, as long as they play the best they can, it's going to be really tough for any of these other teams to compete with them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Echo did that #1 seed that even when they had a replacement healer, because Alia couldn't compete in that last cup, they still managed to just win with a replacement healer. Just, of course, Jeef is a really good player himself, but without that synergy, it's still very difficult to just replace a player in your team. But they still just managed to pull it off and get that #1 seed in that last cup. So really impressive by them. And they just continue to impress here in this first dungeon in the global finals, as they are still on 0 deaths, up to 69% trash. So they definitely got quite a bit extra trash through the maze because of those different kinds of mechanics with the trees and with the elementals by the Shaman, as we've talked about earlier. And one more thing I wanted to mention is that in the past, we've seen not many Shamans mainly because they weren't able to be Night Fae, right? Night Elf, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. So they didn't have Shadow Melt, right? There's no way a Shaman can be Night Elf, so there's no way they have Shadow Melt. But because they also have the Paladin now, who can also not be a Night Elf, that doesn't actually matter anymore. None of these teams are using their Shadow Melt strategies to go past trash or skip certain things. So now they actually can add these different classes that cannot be Night Elves. So it's really cool to see Shamans that we really haven't seen in most MDI cups at all, because of the fact that they were not able to be Night Elves.
Yeah, if I try to remember the last time we saw an Ellie Shaman at MDI Cup play, I think you have to go back to 2 years ago where we saw DJ Frush playing it, and that was back when we had Reaping as an affix in BFA. And Ellie was really good overall damage back then too. It's just, could be Night Elf. So a lot of the skips that people were doing, especially with that Reaping Affix back then, it just cost them too much time. So they weren't able to really compete with some of the more practiced teams back then. So it's cool to see it come back into the meta now that Night Elf isn't as prevalent. And, hopefully it's something that's, really good so it can shake up the meta a little more here.
Yeah, that's always super interesting to see. Especially, it's also going to be interesting to see which team plays Shaman in what dungeon. Because, of course, there's still other dungeons and other classes that you can play depending on the affixes, depending on what your strategy is. So we're going to have to see what kind of team chooses to play the Shaman and in which dungeons as well. As we see Echo now in that last trash area, they're up to 71% trash. So they're still going to be playing one Pride. There it is. So they're spawning that last Pride here. Some bolster stacks going off here on the Acid Gullets, but they should be able to finish it off no problem. And so they didn't skip any Prides, right? They played all of the Prides so far. We've seen MDI teams skip Prides with invisibility potions in the past, but no skips here for Echo in this Mists.
Yeah, one of the things I'm interested to look at, and with Echo being so far ahead, it's kind of hard to compare the two teams here and try to draw any sort of major team strengths from them here. I want to compare how big of a difference the 20 dungeon is going to be to the 18s that we saw at the end of Cup 4. Looking at some of the times we had back then, and obviously we can't take the affixes into account too much, but some of our faster miss times on that 18 were in the high 12s, low 13s. So I'm interested to see how close Echo can actually get to that time. They do have this last AoE pack to get through, and then, of course, the final boss. It looks like it's going to be, probably about 1.5 to 2 minutes slower, which surprisingly isn't that much when you talk about 2 entire dungeon levels higher.
Yeah, definitely not. And they don't have higher item level, right? They do have sockets now, which they didn't have in the past in the cups. So definitely a little bit of a damage increase for having those extra stats on the sockets, but it's not as big of a deal as it maybe was in the past. So those extra secondary stats from the sockets really not making that big of a difference. So really interested to see how quick they can finish this off, as they're now up to 98%. That means they're just going to be finishing off the boss and then kill the last few mobs that they need to proc that 100% Pride. They did pull one Reaver on top of this last pull, so they definitely have everything planned perfectly. Of course, the maze is set in Mists on this tournament realm here, so both of the teams got the exact same maze, so they know exactly what's going to happen. There's no RNG involved whatsoever. But Echo just doing an incredibly well job on this first dungeon here. 0 deaths still, just nuking Tredova. Fragnance has Celestial Alignment just now popping it with this Convoke as well. Was just waiting until those larvae died, so he's not wasting any of his damage on those. And yeah, just huge amount of damage coming out of the Moonkin here.
Yep, also the Ashen Hollow Wings just now being popped by Zalia. You can see him just, casually doing more DPS than both the Ellie Shaman and the Fire Mage. That's fine, nothing crazy to look at there. And Tredova is just getting completely melted here, now down below 40%. I believe they only need to pick up, 3 of those larvae to finish off their trash count here. If I remember properly, they're 2/3 of a percentage, so it should be pretty easy for them to AoE those down with the end of the boss here. They might even just pull the entire pack in as well and AoE it down when the boss is sub 10% here. But, we're going to be kind of close to that 1.5, 2 minute slower mark here once they finish off Tredova now that the cooldowns are running out. And yeah, Echo just, 20 is no big deal for them. They're just chilling, cruising through the dungeon here.
Yeah, I was just staring at the damage meter here because for one second it looked like Zalia is going to beat Fragrance even on single target, but he just barely didn't manage to beat the Moonkin. But it was close. Just huge amount of damage by Zalia here on that Venthyr Holy Paladin. And really good time. 14 minutes in, they're about to finish off Tredova, and as you mentioned, only need a few of those larvae. They can probably, there we go. They pulled it already because, of course, as long as they don't pull it before the boss goes down, everything is going to fine. Very efficient. Mirror's going down, unfortunately, there at the very end. They're now finishing off that last stretch. Unfortunately, not having a perfect run, but still, 14 minutes 41 as they win that first dungeon against Stygia.
Wow, Echo coming out here. Oh, there we go. Echo coming out here to absolutely impress onto this one, taking game number 1 on this one, and showing, once again, new meta, but also showing here, Dratnos, that 20s are not that big of a deal for them, only having like a minute or so increase in their time, still being able to one-phase Inga Malik. That is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and that death at the end, you may think that stops it from being a perfect run, but that was a Shaman. Shaman has Ankh, so that doesn't count.
Big
it's still a
defensive.
perfect run. So
Just
we'll put
efficient
that on the
use of
scoreboard.
cooldowns, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and
That's
actually,
right.
when you have a paladin, they have that retribution aura anyways that they can put on and get wings from it. So it's actually a clever use of cooldowns there from Echo. So we'll be taking that death off the scoreboard for them, of course. Here's the damage meters, though. Look at what Echo have been able to pump out here. Mira's as well on the Elemental Shaman, almost achieving Fire Mage levels of DPS. And look at the healing done as well. 509k healing done on that Shaman. That is so much to be contributing as a DPS player. Providing all of that ancestral guidance healing on those specific pulls basically lets Xaylia focus purely on damage and lets Xaylia do as much damage as now in that dungeon.
Yeah, and that is really a great selling point for some of these compositions like we talked about before, Zyro, being able to have that extra off healing from some more casters into the group so that the Venthyr Pally can just do what they do best every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the freest healing in the world. You press a button that's off GCD and you get 25% of your total damage converted to healing. You know, if you're doing 25k DPS on a pack, that's just 6k HPS on the entire group. It's kind of ridiculous. And you can see when it shows off here. Xaylia able to do 6.5k overall DPS. That's fine. That's a healer DPS right there.